That night, Edward was trying to sleep until he saw Joshua, who was sadder than before. "Oh, Joshua," said Edward. "Is it about the new engine? Did she cause trouble?" "Not really," answered Joshua. "Doris was blind engine and it was hard to make sure she was safe, but that was not a problem." Then Joshua told the story of when James lied that he had broken down and asked Joshua to pull his trucks to Wells work and make him not finish his own work. "Yeah, I understand," said Edward softly. "James sometimes didn't like pulling trucks. Henry also made fun of me on the way. He complained. Big engines sometimes hard to accept with little engines." Edward tried to cheer him up. "Let me tell you, when I first worked on Sodor, when Edward was about to start it, all the engines stood aside wanting to listen his story too. Once upon a time, on a furnace railway, Edward telling a story, my controller told me that I was asked to be my new job at the Northwestern. Northwestern Railway is located on the Sodor. The controller said there they need a very diligent and reliable engine to help them build a new station. "Yes, sir," Edward replied. "Good luck there," Edward's sister said. "Don't worry," Edward replied. "I'll be fine there." But that's easier said than done. When Edward arrived on Sodor, he was surprised to see how the place was. There were many engines there. Edward soon started to get used to Sodor. He met Nell and his brother, and he also met Jillian and the other coffee pot engines. At first everything was fine, but then it happened. "What happened?" asked Joshua. "The new station was finished, but the first fat controller was good. The new controller, known as Sir Topham Hatt, was in charge of the railway now. Nell and his brother were never seen again, and the coffee pot engine was no longer needed, and I was left in the shed for quite a long time. Thomas, who arrived on Sodor just before me, was still left to work here, but he only worked in the yard near the big station. A few years later, he brought new engines there. They look more modern than me. Days went by and more new engines were in the shed. They were very arrogant and saying I was old, and they were right. I thought there was no hope. Until then, the two drivers came to the shed. They felt sorry for me and tried to make me happy. They lit my firebox and immediately got off the shed. We enjoyed the journey there. We picked up the passenger and returned happily. A few days later, the two blue engines were sent away from Sodor because they were rude and unreliable. One of the big blue engines that was still in Sodor was Gordon. He was almost the same as the two previous engines. He was arrogant in front of Edward and complained when he had to carry a goods train. One day, Gordon was stuck on the steep hill. Edward was asked to push Gordon up, but he thought that an engine like Edward was not strong enough to push him, and he did not even thank Edward after he helped him. The Fat Controller knew and saw everything. "Edward," called the Fat Controller, "you have worked very hard and are relied on. As a reward, you will be given a new coat of paint and a new number as my official Sodor engine." Edward soon forgot about the rude Gordon, and that's the end of the story. Finished Edward. Joshua was relieved and immediately forgot about the problems from earlier, especially Henry and James. The next day, Toby came with a happy Doris. "Hello, Toby." "Hello, Doris," Joshua said. "It's good to see Doris again." "Oh, of course," Toby said. "Doris is safe with me in Farquhar. I've tried to make sure she's careful and doesn't crash into anything." And that's when the porter came. He was looking for one of the engines that could help James, who lost his wheel. "I'd love to help," Toby said, "but my cow catcher is broken and needs to be fixed." "Maybe Joshua can," I don't want to, Joshua replied. James has gotten me into trouble, so I'm not going to help him. Okay, Trouble replied. But you'll get in trouble again for refusing to help him. Joshua was still upset, but he knew Toby was right. Can Doris come along? He asked. Sure, the protector replied. Make sure she is safe, Toby called. James was still waiting for someone to help him. Joshua and Doris arrived. You and that blind diesel! What can you do? James complained. If you don't stop complaining, your war will never be finished because I won't help you, Joshua said firmly. Joshua and Doris immediately coupled up to James, and little by little, Joshua and Doris pushed their wheel as hard as they could until they finally succeed. We did it! Doris shouted. And finally, they arrived at the station. Everyone cheered, but not for James or Joshua, but for Doris, the new engine. It made James jealous of her, but Joshua was still happy and proud for her.